do what they want to do, which is everything.
Yes, I saw that. For each?
Well, on average, some may be a little more, some may be a little less. You know, the 30s are going to be less,
Yeah, the bigger ones,
45s are going to be more.
yeah. And then the monster ones.
Howdy.
But then all
Pretty good.
told,
New rec, they're gonna send him
We steal your gavel?
I don't know.
I'll blame it on Leslie, but.
Okay.
I don't know. We'll find it for next meeting.
Okay.
Oh, we're live? Oh, I did that? Okay, that's the new gavel. Evening, everybody. Welcome to the East Bay Charter Township Planning Commission. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And Claire's going to do a roll call?
I will, yes.
Okay.
Edley. Here. Walters.
Here.
Ferguson.
Here.
Leonard.
Here.
Gonzalez.
Here.
Richardson.
Here.
Wassam. Present.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is review for conflict of interest. Anyone stating such, feel free to do so. Hearing none, should be in good shape. Well, let's have a look at the agenda. Any changes, updates, or adjustments to the agenda?
Yeah, without objection, I'd like to change the order of business on item 9E to move that up to item 9B, right after the election of officers.
Okay, is there a second for that?
I'll support.
Okay, there's a motion by Paul and seconded by Renee to adjust the meeting as such. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. We will make that small adjustment. Thanks for the heads up. Moving on, the approval of meeting minutes from August 1st, 2023 of the regular meeting.
So before we do that, it's not a huge deal, but my name's spelled different in several places.
Which way would you like it spelled?
I'd like it spelled E-D-L-Y. It's spelled E-D-L-E-Y in two places. I gotta find it now. Found it earlier online.
Your 9A.
Yeah, there's a second place too. Under,
The second part of 9A.
yeah. Yeah. Not a big deal, but.
Total.
Since
you
we're,
all know why.
since we're doing that, there's an ON at the end of my name on the same 9A in the motion.
Yes, thank you.
Just figure if we don't correct it, it's gonna be wrong every
Right.
time.
Nobody will ever know how to spell it.
I get it. Any other corrections or alterations? If not, I'd take a motion with those amendments.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of August 1st, 2023 with the corrections we just discussed.
Thank you. So we got a motion by Mindy, seconded by Carl for approval of the meeting minutes August 1st with the discussed amendments. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. On to number 6, public comment. For those in the general public, feel free to talk about anything not on the agenda at this time. You'll have 2 to 3 minutes. We get some wild ones lately, but feel free, don't be shy. Okay, no takers? I can deal with a short public comment period, appreciate it. All right, correspondence. Don't see anything new, anything we need to be aware of, Claire, before we dive in?
Nope, just what was in your packet. There's one, the training in Leelanau County, and then Blair Township undertaking the master plan update.
Wonderful. Next up would be under reports, Mindy, Township Board.
We had the shortest township board meeting I've ever been to last month, and we talked about emergency services and the millage rates for 2024.
Questions, Mindy? Thank you. Paul, ZBA.
We had a shorter meeting, we had none.
He beat you.
And last but not least, Claire, planning and zoning.
Okay, well, thanks to all the planning commissioners that attended the 3-mile trail extension Safe Routes Open House. We had a really good turnout. We had 100 people show up, is what TART estimated. So next steps is fundraising, because as I think was articulated, it's going to be a big price tag with all the boardwalk. And then staff is, the township is continuing to work on the safe routes and working with property owners on easements and consent to grade, but we've got all the funding, so those are moving forward, which is exciting. Wanted to just report one minor amendment to an approved site plan that was for the Avid Hotel. We've been struggling a little bit with ensuring that connectivity with Days Inn. And so the developer applicant was able to preserve that connection, but they needed to kind of rearrange the retention basin. They basically made it quite a bit smaller, but included some underground retention. So it was reviewed by Wade Trim. It's the same amount of stormwater retention capacity, and it preserves the connection. So it's a minor amendment to the approved site plan, but just wanted to mention that. And that's all that I have for tonight.
Okay. Any questions for Claire? All right. We'll dive right in for new business before the planning commission. First, and probably the most exciting here, it's going to be a review of the bylaws and election of officers. And it looks like we've got a host of all of them that will serve for another year who are already here.
And
But
can I
hap-
give just one quick update
Yes,
on
please
the-
kick us off.
So the bylaws were last updated a while ago. I can't remember what year it was. It's in your packet. They were last amended or adopted in,
Says 2026,
2016.
but-
There was a lot of kind of inconsistencies in them. The process, the agenda wasn't necessarily reflective of kind of current best practice and the way that we structure our agendas. So staff went through and reviewed the bylaws, and I also sent it to legal counsel. They recommended some changes as well, mostly administrative and procedural, referencing the correct acts, consistency in the roles for staff versus commissioners. Our bylaws basically dictated that the commission does everything, but, you can also have a staff representative, so we articulated that. Records retention, steps for declaring a conflict of interest, and like some more specific guidance for the planning commission if there is a conflict, statement on the severability of it. So happy to answer any questions, but you'll see they're a little bit longer than they were, but they're just kind of some procedural and administrative changes. So if you are confident or comfortable with those recommended changes, that's one of the motions that's recommended for you tonight, along with appointing. And it's best practice to review them on some regular schedule, and so I'll just continue to put the bylaws in your September packet, just so you can take a look at it when you appoint your officers.
Perfect. Thank you for that explanation. Any questions on the bylaws for Claire? Okay.
Were we going to change when we elected officers?
I thought we kicked that around not so long ago. I can't remember where we landed, honestly.
We end up not changing it.
Yes,
I
that's what I
did.
felt like.
But I thought we wanted to look at it the next time.
I talked with Beth, and the recommendation was to keep it in this cycle, and I'm blanking on the exact reason behind that.
Does it have to do with the appointment schedule?
I seem to remember last time we had one or two people who were either stepping down or something right about this time, but I don't remember. Or they've reached the end of their 3-year term.
Yeah,
Is that possible?
so the appointments go through the end of July, and then the officers are September. And so I think we felt like it was helpful to have like a one-month gap period for.
Deliberation.
Yeah, for appointing the officers.
Gotcha.
Seems reasonable to me.
Well, we can kick things off with
I'll make a
whichever
motion.
one you want to start with.
Approve the amended bylaws.
There we go. Is there a second for that? Okay. We'll go with item number 4. So Carl's got a motion to approve the amended bylaws, supported by Rhonda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. We're good on the bylaws. And just to refresh our memory, Carl is the current secretary, and Paul is the current vice chair. Okay,
So do we have to do each officer individually, or?
You can do either. If you want to do a whole slate, you're welcome to do that, or you can do them individually.
Because I'd be happy to make a motion to keep things the
Oh,
way they
yep.
are.
Support.
Yep.
Look at that. Any discussion? No?
Haven't even heard our campaign speech yet.
yeah, it's a campaign to change, but I like it.
You mean I got to cancel the flyby?
I'm fine. I'm fine with that.
Okay,
Okay,
are you good?
Yeah, fine.
You want to trade?
no.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion by Renee, seconded by Mindy, to keep things as they are. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Nobody gets to get my gavel.
Well, they took it away from you, so.
They did.
You'll get it back on the second meeting this month.
No
Okay.
message.
All right, so we're bumping down to letter B, which is actually letter E on the agenda. So first item of new business is site plan review 9-23 Beach Club Noving LLC, and this is a public hearing. And maybe before we have the public hearing, Claire, if you wouldn't mind just kind of giving us a synopsis as to the project and what's before us.
So I think you are all on site this evening. Just for brief background, and I know a number of these jet ski boat rental operations have come before you in the past several years and one this summer. But just for some background, so this has been operated for 9 years at its current location without a land use permit or township approval. So we have gone back in our records. We don't have any land use approvals on record for this property, just because that home, the garage, those were built, they predated zoning. So they're old buildings. So the applicant was made aware that the site plan approval, the applicant was recently made aware that site plan approval was required. And so the township has been working with the applicant to come into compliance. So you'll see that this site is noticeably unimproved compared with surrounding properties in the regional business district. The parking lot's unpaved, there's limited existing landscaping, kind of contributing to that desired beach experience for guests. You'll see on the proposed plans, the landscaping, there's significant improvements that are proposed for landscaping, as well as there are a number of conditions that the applicant has indicated that they will work with the township to get into compliance. I would recommend a year, but the planning commission can kind of make a determination on that. So it would be landscaping, it would be the signage. You'll see that there's the signage at the front of the building. It exceeds the square footage that's required for basically building mounted signage. The window signage per our ordinance is also includes building mounted signage. So it'd be the landscaping, the signage, and then just a few of the docks that are within that 45-foot setback. But other than that, the stormwater, this would be exempt from stormwater, exempt from soil erosion, exempt from metro fire. They have approved the oil storage, gasoline storage, but in terms of just the site plan review, all of these things would be triggered as a part of any future improvements to the site. So I would recommend approving this with the conditions as stated, with the understanding that any, future improvements would trigger a full site plan review. So the applicant came onto this property and really didn't put any new structures, significant primary structures in or anything like that. Our township engineer did take a look at the stormwater and didn't have any concerns, and you'll see there's a letter from Damien included in the packet related to stormwater, so. Happy to answer any questions, we've got the applicants here, but.
And maybe if you guys could come up, actually, let's pause real quick. Any questions for Claire? Okay, I mean, there might be more, but yes, if the applicants are here, whomever they be, okay. And please give us your name and address.
Our address of our business or our home address?
You choose your own adventure.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to say, my name's Sarah Harding. Our home address is 6845 East Birch Point Road, Traverse City, Michigan, 49684.
Eric Harding, same address.
Copy that. Nice to meet you. So just a little bit of background maybe on the business and operation and kind of what's going on today.
So we purchased the property 9 years ago from the Fergusons, and my husband's been running his boat rental on East Bay for 33 years, previously at Bay Winds, which his family owned. We were able to secure the property after a long-term relationship with the Fergusons, and so we've been running our boat rental and parasailing business out of that property. We were not aware of any issues and were made aware recently, so we have been working with Claire on conforming. We're committed to conforming. We're committed to being part of the Miracle Mile, and the only thing that we would ask is that we just get a year, as this is going to be a significant investment for us. We are a seasonal business down there, so our revenue only comes in basically middle of June until 60 days, so that we do have some time to get into compliance with the landscaping and the irrigation requests.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you for the intro. And we're going to have a public hearing, and if any questions come up, we may come back to you, but thank you. Appreciate you being here. Okay, that being said, we'll open the public hearing at 6:48. And anyone that wishes to speak on the matter, feel free to come up to the lectern and ask any questions or make any comments you may have. Okay, this would be a quick one. So we'll close the public hearing at 6:49 and bring it back to the Planning Commission. Any questions for the applicant or for staff on this one? Feels fairly straightforward.
So at the site plan review, Eric indicated that where the decking got narrower, that gets removed in the seasonally. I'm looking at this aerial photograph, and it looks to me like that decking still exceeds that 45-foot mark with the wider stuff. As the same thing as on the Gosling-Zubik drawing. But that's all temporary decking, right? So to remove additional pieces of that is possible, correct? You got to come up to the
Could you come
lectern,
up to the
because
lectern,
it's going to be,
Yeah, those are all just temporary, just set there with a board in between and screwed together, so yes, probably from the aerial, we left it in because the water went down and it wasn't a big deal. But it is temporary, and we can remove it in the next week. We're closed today.
so also on this aerial, it shows the 3 lines of the snow fence. Have you even seen this?
Yes. You see them?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do that. We do that every year. Otherwise, the sand is going across the road. This is
Okay.
the state park.
Okay, that was my only question.
Thank you.
And I will just mention, technically, our ordinance allows minor accessory buildings to be within that setback. So the, kind of the past precedent is that that, if you'll recall, with like our TC Water Sports review, even though it was less than 100 square feet, it was considered a principal building, just because it was part of the principal operation, so that's why we cleared everything out. So there is a little bit of gray area in terms of, but I think the intent of the ordinance would be to allow that, like that snow fencing to go in.
Well, I wasn't talking about the snow fence, I was talking
Okay.
more about the walkway.
Okay, gotcha.
The snow fence, I think, is necessary. I mean, it's a protection of the people on the highway.
I have one quick question for you, and that's just, we've seen these businesses throughout the district there kind of grow, expand, change use, all that kind of stuff. Do you have kind of a long-term strategy in the future? Would you feel the intensity would grow? Would there be an expansion of the marina, or we're on a trajectory of kind of maintaining what we have right now? Just curious.
We used to have 25 boats down there. And then throughout this whole process between Army Corps engineers and Eagle, they took me back to my original permit, which was 13 boats. So that's how we operated this year. So essentially, this winter, now I have time, I'm going to resubmit and go towards, not 25, I don't want to be that big, but it just, it needs, I need more boats. I mean, plain and simple. I mean,
Got it.
sending people down the road, and
Sure.
I don't want to.
Yeah, and I'm only thinking about it in terms of like what we're considering tonight, and this will at least get you into compliance, right? But then in the future, I'm just curious, would that trigger another site plan update?
Yeah, I would say if you're looking to add more boats, we could make that an administrative approval, so long as parking was satisfied.
Got it.
And then any future, addition to the building, any type of, or, development would come back before the planning commission.
We do condos or whatever.
Yeah,
in the future.
exactly, yep.
So we haven't decided our end goal yet, but we're just sustaining right now.
Sure, okay, just wanted to put that out there.
So if they added more boats and they changed their bottomlands lease with the state, that has to come before the township board.
Got it, that'd be a trigger, okay,
Yeah, it would be.
got it, okay. No, but today, we're playing the hand we've been dealt. We can't really make, adjustments or decisions based on what could be right now, so I just wanted to throw that out there for the next go-around, if you do plan to do that. But that being said, any other questions for the applicant or for staff?
Just to clarify, in the issue of the trees and everything that they're going to put in, it also includes irrigation, because we had talked about whether or not, how you would irrigate. So in the proposal, it includes both the addition of the trees and the foliage and irrigation. So that's just a clarification.
Yeah, the ordinance says that we have to provide for those shrubs and trees. I think that our engineers I think they did a good job.
So Claire, they have up to a year, and that's what you're requesting as well as a year.
Yeah, we just have to put a budget together.
Sure.
Yeah, that would be a timeline that could be that would be determined by the planning commission, because generally, these types of applications that come forth hasn't already, the operation isn't already in place, so this is a unique situation. So I would recommend setting a time limit, and I think a year would be appropriate.
When would you see the clock beginning? As of today? Is that the year, or do we, because we're heading into, the fall and the winter, and,
Please.
you know, and I don't know how
Get through
that,
another summer.
plus setting up the timing, so I just was wondering what the year would be. I'm thinking that it starts this month.
Yeah, and that helps them as a seasonal business. It's only 60 days.
Right.
Get through another and be able to budget for this.
Mhm.
That's fair.
I'm comfortable with a year.
Me too.
Well, with that, any other clarifications?
I'll make a motion to approve site plan review 9-23 for the Beach Club Noving LLC, subject to the staff findings of fact in the following site conditions. One, approval is based on the site plan prepared by Gosling Zubik, dated 7/20/23. The center boardwalk and deck on the east side of the property should be moved outside the 45-foot setback. The plantings on that site plan review from Gosling Zubek should be completed within a year of this meeting. And we are going to waive the requirement for the dumpster enclosure.
That feels about right.
The only other one that I
The
was thinking.
building mounted signage, I think.
The
is the only
signage.
one.
And then the fifth condition is regarding signage under section 2.15 signage. The south-facing wall windows cannot have greater than 20% of the wall area to have signage in them. Is that right? Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. So we have a motion by Cindy, seconded by Stephen, for approval of SPR 9-23 with the proposed findings of fact from staff, as well as conditions 1 through 5 as previously stated. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the evening. All right, next up is site plan review 6-23 Row Investments LLC. This is a project we've already held a public hearing on back in July, and this will be for discussion and possible action.
Don't we need to
What are you
do
gonna
the
do?
sketch plan review for Blue Water?
Oh, I skipped it. Yep, sorry. Sorry. Yep. I'm getting my numbers all mixed up with my letters. Sorry, everyone. Let's go back one. Sketch plan review under Blue Water View. And we have an applicant here this evening to discuss, hopefully. And Claire, maybe if you want to set the table for us.
Sure. So if you'll recall, there's a sketch plan review for this Blue Water View maybe a year, 2 years ago. But they were coming in, taking a look at potentially like a PUD or residential, it didn't fit that well. So this application would be basically providing a use by right, so it's 30 townhomes, it's 6 acres. They're looking at phasing it, the development in 2 phases. The first phase would be off of 4 Mile, a future phase would front Hammond. You'll see there's a number of community amenities, which I'm sure they'll discuss in more detail, but, you know, nice internal walking paths, gazebo, pathway along Hammond, as well as 4 Mile, which isn't technically required in our ordinance yet. We're getting there, but it's a nice amenity. I would say the biggest issue is just the interconnections and the connectivity. So they are proposing a pedestrian connection to the Waterview Ridge development. You know, there's clearly a connection that was developed when Waterview Ridge was developed. It unfortunately wasn't recorded with the Register of Deeds, but the intent was to have a vehicular connection. We've got section 228 of our ordinance, which requires 2 means of access only for developments of 30 units or more, so it wouldn't apply to this development. However, there's section 224 of our ordinance, which requires like a service drive for any development. So again, I think that probably taking a closer look from legal counsel at kind of the interconnectivity requirements for the site will be necessary. I do like that they are proposing a pedestrian connection, but I think, vehicular would be ideal. I know that the property owners have worked with the adjacent Waterview Ridge to try to figure out a connection and hadn't found a solution, and I'm sure Doug can talk more about that, but.
Okay. Thank you for that. And we have a member of the applicant team to come up and present.
So I must have to donate another easel here next time, so, because I've had one here, I think, for 10 years, that I forgot, but it always stayed here, it was always convenient. So
It's
I'll
with the
drop off
gavel.
another one.
Yeah.
So, Doug Mansfield, Mansfield Land Use Consultants, 830 Cottage View Drive, Suite 201, Traverse City, Michigan. Tonight, on behalf of Ron Lomas, who is in the audience, his wife. And I also have interested parties in the development and contractors looking at this development, because I think Ron's been brought to his senses, maybe, and said, maybe we should put this to sale. So we have interested parties. So this is a crucial time to come for a sketch plan review, make sure that these gentlemen understand what the proposals and the rules are. This is a project for us that started January, February of 2020. And then we all went home for 6 months, if you remember. And then we came to light and we did some concepting on this project. And then they started the roundabout design and installation, which Ron had to work continually for probably 6 months to a year with easements and purchases, utilities, and rightfully so, he did the right thing, hearing that all out, because it really changed the dynamics of that whole intersection, and in a great form. So the site is around 6 acres. A lot of that is in right-of-way from the meets and bounds descriptions for Hammond Road and 4 Mile Road being primary roads. But north is up, Waterview Ridge is over here as it circles around and comes out, and these are the units on it, and that is the existing physical tie-in intersection. We have, that discussion probably started in late '21 with the Waterview Ridge folks. We had a meeting here initially, talked about the project, talked about the requirements of the ordinance. Then I will say you could feel the trough of the attorneys turn on, and we all tried to put skids to that because we didn't want to be in lockup discussion. But I will say the request, good or bad, the board didn't understand, or the board of directors now, which is made up of owners, didn't understand what the developer had promised the township. It is in writing, but like Claire said, it's not recorded. So they had to do a bunch of research and understand what they were into, and then how that affected their circulation, headlights, traffic, irrigation, plantings, all those kind of things. And I probably did 5 or 6 different design concepts. I know we met with their attorneys and these kind of things, and it just got mucked up. So Ron went back and lowered the density to 30, understanding your ordinance. Which it has countering ordinances too, and goals and objectives, which we all understand, being in Traverse City and trying to make a turn. But at this time, when the roundabout was completed, this parcel here, right along that line, was divided out separately, and that's the phasing. This is actually held by 2 different corporations. So initially, our phase 1 would be this loop here, which comes off 4 Mile with a full intersection, the correct distance away from the roundabout. To move in, we are proposing to put all the pedestrian circulation, all the trail circulation, internal circulation. And really what Ron started developing with his designer was a cluster development which requires all those amenities, all those details. When houses are this close together, people feel in touch each other's yards and homes. So that attention to detail is crucial. And he came back to Claire, and we talked about single-family cottages. That didn't really fit in the ordinance. So what he's done strategically is group these in duplex formations, triplex or multifamily at that point, and those are attached through the basements. Okay, so structurally, this is a multifamily unit. What that does is eliminates a lot of the setbacks required between buildings in the ordinance. And he was able to basically cut those side yards between the duplexes internally down to half of what they would be if you separated the buildings, okay? And that created a lot more space. Basically, we ended up a unit that will look like a single-family cottage on there with attached in certain areas and detached garages with another parking space. So we've got 2 parking spaces per unit, and they're all self-sustaining. We break them up because the grade of this every so often has to be deflected as it goes down from Hammond Road as it continues north. So we need to break those foundations and step the project down. It's going to be served by private roads and then public utilities. Much of those utilities were also redone during the roundabout, and the tank was installed at that time. I mean, so many things have happened utility-wise in this corridor. So the perimeter utilities are on 4 Mile and Hammond fully. So everything is geared then around the central courtyard here, which has a gazebo. We fashion it to be a place that you go at 3 o'clock and you just have the fight about where to go to dinner at night. So with your neighbors, and pick them up and I'll go, and have that social equation. This will also be stormwater retention here, and then ultimately the stormwater goes in the final basin to the far north of the site. So Ron has put together, and you've got copies, a very nice elevation. These are very detailed, very extremely efficient homes. Given the time he's had, he has tweaked this floor plan with his designer 20 times probably. And each time it's gotten more efficient, taking advantage of the space, advantage of construction material, construction systems. He has probably driven his designer crazy with, hey, ideas in the middle of the night, how to make this more efficient. So we're left with a very satisfying project, but it does have some hurdles as we go into final engineering. And it was worth coming here tonight and saying, what are your concerns with this project? I know it's been looked at. Well, I worked on Waterview Ridge. I think that was the first 3-dimensional view corridor study we did. I brought in a PC and a great big monitor because we had nothing of those tools that you have so easily now, and that's why each of those units steps down to guarantee that view. But at that time, we had the church across the street, and that corridor was really protected. This piece actually has almost no views when you enter here. So the corridor views, it opens up again past 4 Mile. But, and then of course it was a work area during construction for the staging of the roundabout too, so there's no trees of any size or magnitude on the site. It's a barren plateau. So it'll make a very interesting corner. We're not, originally we looked at some commercial there and that just didn't fit in the mold in the market. So I'd say we've taken this thing apart about as much as we can. But obviously, some goals and objectives still are out there, and we kind of need to know as we move into final design what your thoughts are on that. I know Waterview Ridge, if we have public hearings, they're going to come out and say they don't want it like they always do. The developer's not really interested in it. We have preliminarily gone to the fire department, but have not gotten a review from them on the project. It does have all the turning movements it requires. And actually, if it's multifamily per the International Fire Code, you don't have to have a secondary access till you get to 120 units. Single family is still 30, but the multifamily goes up to 120, so there's should be no claim to having that need other than just the desire to have 2 access points for each of the fire stations that access the site. So, here tonight, I obviously know there's no approval, no denial, no response. But if you have concerns about this, we'd like to get them on the table now and take those back to the platform and just see if we can meet your goals and objectives with it. So. That's it.
Thank you. Questions of the applicant or staff?
I was just curious, do the individual units step down or the groupings step down?
Grouping step down.
Grouping step down, okay, that's why the elevation views are, okay.
So they're basically connected by the basements only.
Mhm.
I've never even seen or heard of that. That's interesting.
It's very interesting.
It is.
It works structurally. There's some waterproofing over the slab that connects them that you'll have to have, but it's, I won't say it's uncommon or to have to do that on top of concrete.
So are these, what I'm seeing, the railings in between, are they actually connecting the homes, or is that keeping, I'm just trying to figure that out.
It's actually a gateway kind of through the courtyard out into the garages, so
Okay.
trying to define some private space.
Okay.
Can you speak to the connectivity or lack thereof for automobiles to the neighbor to the east,
To
in the southeast corner? Just, yep, yep.
As I said, that was in the site plan. It was in the approval. It was supposed to be recorded with the condominium documents, I believe, but it wasn't. So whether that was, the township has a checkpoint. They've had a checkpoint when it comes to condominiums for a long time. I think it was a motion, part of the approval even, we saw. It just wasn't done, and that's where the argument exists. So I won't say it was by design or deceit, but it was clear to the person that was involved, at least, maybe not the buyers. And I happened to be involved at that time. So I will say, all the discussions were objective, open. It didn't get to the point of breakdown within the discussions. But it was definitely, they didn't want any part of it, and they had every reason that we always hear. Road maintenance, safety, liability, headlights, snow removal, all those things, the same stuff that we always hear against it. There were ideas to move and reconstruct the entrance, which was going to be, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and really didn't do much,
Right.
But, yeah.
As I can appreciate, like, you have driveways across the road, literally on the west side of 4 Mile there, that are closer than yours. So I get the reprieve there. It seems to be working for them. Why wouldn't it work here? But it's also just like, what are we really doing here? I mean, the whole goal is to eliminate those types of things. We have the existing infrastructure. And, yeah, but I get the legal battle that could ensue as well.
I think Claire said it best when she says we need to talk to our attorney again, because obviously the township has a record of it. It's designed that way. It was built that way. Our ordinance required it at that time. So as far as the township is concerned, it was a requirement of them at the time for which it got approved. And I think if you took it to a jury, they would see the same thing. It's built, it was approved, it was required. I'm kind of,
Because it's physically there.
it's physically there. I believe that there needs to be a physical connection there. And what I'll say is this, is that although roundabouts increase the deaths from traffic accidents, they increase the traffic accidents in them, right? So if you live in this development and you're coming down Hammond, now you can't get home unless you have another way in. And that is, to me, why we need another way in, is one of just the, I understand people don't like the connectivity, they don't want the traffic, but as a person trying to get home because your kids are home alone or whatever it may be, we need to be able to get home.
It does happen there. We've already felt that a couple of times, for sure.
People would just read the sign on how to take the darn roundabout. Don't get
Education's key.
started.
Steven, you had a question?
I do. I'm assuming you had some sort of concepts for connecting to that. Was there one final design where like, if they allowed it, this is what we would go with? Did you have a layout for that, or is this?
There was, a design that they liked that fixed a lot of their existing drainage.
Who's
problems.
they?
Waterview Ridge.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it moved the headlights away, made the opening. Basically, it made it harder for people to go into Waterview Ridge. This was a very smooth transition here, and this elbowed into it and fixed some irrigation problems and drainage problems that they had here, because that first unit gets a lot of water flowing into it here. So it, yeah, but it was basically reconstructing the approach and everything else, and it was like, wow, that's not what was intended either. And I think that's where the discussions kind of went, we're going to try to do something without it, okay? And satisfy all the requirements, but maybe not the goals and objectives. The township, I thank them for, they set up the first meeting. This is the board member, you know, this is Ron, and introduced everything, and, but then they've been out of it. It would help to have them facilitate the issue of Waterview Ridge, you need to let that happen. Developer here, you need to make that happen, you know, or else, you know. So, because we really tried, I think we're all, after COVID, we're all alive, we're kind of getting along, let's just keep it at that temperament kind of thing, you know, and facilitate things, and we're all glad to be back together kind of thing. But then it just kind of, you know, fell off for a while, and as we tried to rethink it, so.
Yeah, that just, in my mind, is a hot topic, because how many times have we had deals come in where it's like the neighboring one that everybody thought we teed it up the right way, and then there's a loophole all the way around it, all the way to do it without, you know, meeting the intent of creating an actual neighborhood, right? Which I think is what this whole chunk was teed up for, clearly. So, yeah, I'm kind of in your space with, like, why wouldn't we utilize that efficiency if the infrastructure's physically there? And I like the idea of having another way to get through that intersection if things go awry, because it already has in the year it's been there.
I also think of emergency vehicles trying to get into that place. If they're heading east down Hammond, now they gotta go around the roundabout, the whole thing pretty much, rather than just kind of going around it and coming in the other side. I like the layout. It's an interesting design. I like the creativity. It's just that connection I think needs to be made.
So I have a question, I don't know if this might be for you, Claire, but okay, so it didn't get recorded. Not pointing any fingers, don't know how that happened, but is there any kind of recourse on that? I mean, it was decided on, everything was agreed upon, and it
Yeah.
fell through the cracks, and it's like, well, isn't there any kind of recourse?
So I will circle back with Peter Wendling, with our legal counsel, and have him like draft a more formal memo. I gathered all of the approval documents from Waterview Ridge. This was probably a year and a half, 2 years ago. He reviewed it all. He said, you know, clearly the intent was a connection. We don't have the legal basis for the township to require that connection. And so that was kind of the last that we've looked at it. So
Don't have the legal, because it wasn't recorded?
yeah, and the recording has been done, I guess, over the condominium documents have generally always been recorded, but in terms of the interconnectivity recording with the Register of Deeds, that's more recent. That's been the last 3-4 years that all of our interconnections, we've required that documentation.
So it wasn't required then?
I mean, it's not a requirement in the ordinance, but the only way to effectively implement the ordinance is to require the recording. So that's the
guess that's where I
challenge that
was
we
going
run
with it
into.
is
Yeah.
How did it slip through the cracks, and how do we not have recourse, but, so it wasn't required then? to be
It wasn't
recorded.
part of our, process back then to do that. So our new ordinance, the way we're drafting it, is, having some more specificity about how those recordings would occur.
Because,
But-
and I like that, because just like you said, Dan, is that every time we have a development that had an intent to connect, when it comes time to actually do it, that development has an issue with it. Every time.
Every time.
Every
A lot of
time.
times the homeowners don't know about it.
Yeah.
before they
Well,
buy.
that's because they probably didn't fully
Yeah.
read their
Document.
documents,
I know,
which
I-
none of us do, but I'm just saying, it doesn't mean that it isn't.
Yeah, and we have had
Legit.
a number of, successes, like the Hayfield, what is it now, Victoria Farms. That wasn't recorded, but we were able to work with
Right.
the applicant. And so we've had a number of situations where we've been able to make those connections, but it'd be nice to formalize it. So I will circle back with Peter and get a more formal letter from him that we can, as a next
That
step.
helps me understand why we can't force the issue. Okay.
Would this be a for sale product or a for rent product? For sale.
Did you say it would help if the township facilitated those
Well,
meetings? I was just curious.
Yeah, the initial one was a meet and greet, personalities connecting, who's the board president this year, and who's the developer, trying to understand what the project was. And the project has evolved. I mean, at the time, there was some commercial, and that scared them, and those kind of things. That's gone away. And then we went, to our own separate areas, and then Ron and I met with the board president several times, and then I met with the board president, alone, trying to just, fish something out, drawing different schematics and emailing them, and then it just got out of hand. When he took it back to their membership, it just grew and grew, and they wanted to fix every problem they had, and it was just, this ain't gonna happen. So we need to have that, you guys need to connect, you guys need to connect, and it's here, or else the trough is really gonna start, with the suit and ties, so.
I guess that does make sense to just have a final kind of decision there for Claire, for you to work from Peter.
So is the main concern just the lights and the, because the homes are Water Ridge?
Waterview Ridge, right?
Yep, so with this new development and that connectivity, is their main concerns just lighting, traffic? I mean, there's only.
I'll say it's a list
Farther
of
north, aren't they?
items that are almost on every one of these that we see. It's lighting,
Okay.
snow plowing.
Wear and tear.
Wear and tear and pavement, yeah, all
Okay.
drainage. It's just, there's this continual list. I don't, truthfully, I live in a very rural area myself, but I've lived in old towns and, and again, we said, obviously, no construction traffic would come through there, those kind of things, no trucks of any kind, those kind of things beyond, I think, a box car or box truck type, Amazon type deliveries that are so prevalent these days. So we're pretty aware of this situation, but it's just all the same one, and then it ends up being, well, it's not recorded, we don't have to do it, blah, 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 and, so. And we just didn't, nobody wanted it to get to that level. We wanted to continue discussion, so. Ron did, I don't know how many nights he missed sleep, because he'd come up with these ideas, and he'd craft and work it, and these kind of things. But in the end result, we still have to come before you people and say, if we do all this work to do final engineering and all those things that go into a development, if we're gonna get into a roadblock, we wanna know it now, So let's try to cure that is what we're hearing. It's important to you, we wanna see, see it happen, so.
I do like the design. I think it's a very attractive
Oh, yeah.
design.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I do as well.
As compared
Yeah.
to, next door.
Has a lot of character. Yes.
I mean, if we get into it legally and there's nothing we can do, I mean,
Right.
that layout works. I mean, it,
It checks all the boxes, just, yeah.
Given that we succeed in having the connectivity, how would that change, or would it change your design in any way?
Claire's also pointed out a couple of setbacks, taking it through the use by right and the PUD. I think we still need to amend some. But frankly, I'd be almost okay if it ended in more of a T intersection than something that just flowed through, so it would be traffic calming and things like that. Something to slow people down, it's just not a cut through.
Sure.
Right.
So I think it can be resolved as a success in either way.
But it wouldn't substantially change this design.
Our intent is not to substantially change this or change their plan. It just gets too expensive these days.
Sure.
Okay.
And again, I can't credit Ron enough, because every time an efficiency or a cost-saving mechanism came in, or working in a public-private partnership, he took full advantage of it, exposed himself, to all the different commissions and DPW, and he did it right. So I give him a ton of credit for doing that, so.
Yes.
I have two questions. On Phase 2, closer to Hammond Road, is that going to be one-way?
That is an alley width on those.
Okay.
So we're doing the 16-foot, which would be an alley width. You still have your firefighting and guests along the private frontage, but that is, yeah. I suppose you can assume it's one way, alleys downtown, it's a meet and,
Jockey.
yeah.
My other question is, why do you have this on the Waterview Ridge shaded, ending down further? I mean, it's off property. I was just curious why that's shaded that way.
Oh, here?
Yeah, that,
It's just ending the cross hatching. Yeah. It's still paved all the way through there.
that's what I figured. I was just wondering if that was,
Nope, but
if anything was done to that during the roundabout, and that's why it was added that way. Okay, thank you.
Nope. No, during their roundabout, I think they lost a bunch of irrigation and it had to be redone, and that got them,
Fired up.
yeah, change. Change. So. Well, I know this is all you could do. I thank you for all the time you gave me tonight. I think that nobody fell off their chairs, and I'm not covered in rotten vegetables, so
Yeah.
it's a good night. So I will take that back and meet with all the interested parties, and hopefully we'll be here in the near future, okay?
Can I ask one last question?
Certainly.
Only because, like, I know the view shed that's in there and the availability of a view if you went up a little bit. And I know that there's a lot of time and investment into these duplex and the design. I just wondered, like, from a cost standpoint, you got a lot of concrete in there for road frontage for these units. But I wondered if a mix of
Housing types.
housing type, to take advantage of some of those views?
The concentration was to make it conform to a use by right.
Ah.
We had a mix of units, and if we had to take it back and further expenses, to get the density up, to mix some units would not be out of the question,
Okay.
okay?
I was just thinking,
No.
if you were gonna
No.
offset some of those costs,
Yeah.
that'd be a creative way to do so.
Yep, I agree.
Because I personally, it feels like we've got one or two extra roads in that little thing.
That's New Urbanist thinking, you can't have enough roads in grid format and things like that.
I suppose.
So,
Or we just do one building
I know.
with more units in it.
Yeah.
It's a little higher, as a thought. But that's just me. Okay, well, anyway,
Thanks again.
food for thought.
all your service.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, on to SPR 6-23, Row Investments, LLC, and this is for discussion and possible action, as we've already had the public hearing in July on this project. So Claire, could you maybe bring us up to speed, and then we'll move through the conversation?
Sure. So as you'll recall, there was a public hearing on July 5th, day after the holiday, similar to this. Planning Commission postponed a decision pending more information. Since then, the applicant has submitted complete stormwater application. They've received Grand Traverse Metro Fire approval. We've got the Grand Traverse County Road Commission driveway permit in hand. They've updated the site plan to meet the parking dimensional requirements. They've provided the carport elevations, landscape standards. So in general, we've got a complete application. A few items that I highlighted in the staff report, you'll see. I would recommend adding a lockable gate to the front since the dumpster pad is located right near the entrance of the development. That's for the, but the Planning Commission has the ability to waive that. The site plan doesn't indicate any internal pedestrian connections or, crosswalks between apartments, carports, driveway areas. There's no landscaping surrounding the building or parking areas that could be added, as a part of the landscaping. It's not shown on the site plan, but I think as I articulated in July, we don't have specific requirements related to that at this time in our ordinance. So we have a total, cumulative landscaping requirement. They meet those requirements in terms of total open space, total woody vegetation. There's also no landscaping detail provided for that northern hillside. I can't tell if it's grass or native woody vegetation planned. There's not any irrigation plan for that area. But again, our ordinance isn't very prescriptive related to our landscaping standards. So I am recommending approval of this. You'll see there's some conditions with that approval, performance guarantee for $20,000, which is the estimate for the landscaping, both the labor and the plant cost that would be on file with the township for 2 years. And then, and we've talked with the applicant, they have agreed to screening the evergreen plantings with a minimum of 6 feet in height, 10 feet in depth to provide some additional vegetation to what currently exists along the eastern edge of the site. So, yeah, and that was kind of all that I had for the Planning Commission. And I know the applicant is here as well as the,
I got one question, though.
yeah.
Just more curiosity, what was the outcome about the sewer line down the middle of the property?
Jesse, I'll let you go ahead and.
Jesse Mitchell, 3356 Jackson Road, Kingston, Michigan. So it was determined that that sewer line didn't exist. There was no easement ever recorded for it that I was aware of. The as-built connections, which you can actually draw up a set of prints, but then when they go and build it, a lot of times the contractor changes things. So the as-built connection drawing for the property next door shows those leads going straight south and not going through our property. And then, to be sure, I went out actually and popped the manhole and took pictures of it and made sure there was no flow coming from that. So the DPW just thinks it was a sewer line that never got installed.
Okay, I'm just curious, thanks.
Which, obviously, we needed to know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as far as that hillside, we were just planning to plant trees on that hillside.
On the north.
Straight north, yeah. So we are hoping to get in there this month and finish the grading. We have the truck out, a lot of material. Earthwork is cutting, cutting and making plateaus. And hopefully, there's some neighboring developments that need some sand. We'll be trucking some. Probably over that hotel that's down the road. They need some sand.
I have a few questions for you too, tied to site plan. With the parking that's going to be associated with each one of the buildings, will that be covered?
Says
Yeah.
carport.
I was just trying to find that.
The main parking areas are covered with a lean-to style carport.
I wondered if you were going to use the height of the elevation to kind of build into that?
It'd probably just have a single slope and so the snow can fall off the back instead of the front, and then get caught. And we'll be able to manage the stormwater.
Move the water off the backside of it? Gotcha.
Yeah, so we're still working through some meeting county with all the engineers on the stormwater. And we'll probably be adding some raised edge between this curbing to handle the stormwater easier. Instead of, one of the concerns was diverting any stormwater into the existing ditch there. So we're just going to avoid that theory and keep all the stormwater on the roads to a single discharge spillway down at the approach.
Because this will be a slab with 3-story of residential above it, right? 2-story.
And we're also adding roof gutters to the buildings, so that way we can have a better control on stormwater also. Spill off.
You don't want to do covered parking under the structure itself?
No, that was,
Okay,
he's trying to get something, affordable.
I get it.
Very difficult. But where
So-
it is.
One of the things, just FYI, I want to throw this out there, one of the things that we're looking at right now is some of the implications that MISHA is actually putting out right now in terms of like eligible activities that can benefit housing in doing an actual work plan based on the increase in taxable value of individual developments to help applicants pay for things like eligible investment tied to roads, sewer, water,
Well,
private parking, public parking.
To add a story and have pull-in garages underneath.
That might be where I'm going. But we're not there yet. We're super
Well,
close.
Here's what we're doing. We're gonna get, hopefully, an approval to the board tonight. There's a lot of other stuff to get done. We're just gonna get one foundation in this year, get our site graded, stabilized, get in one foundation. Stan's gonna work on the framing and everything next year. And then it might not be next year and the year after before he does the second building. So maybe if that is in place, we could look at adding the parking on that one.
It's a real thing. It's something that they're still kind of crafting how it all will work in the application of such, but as I'm looking at that last plan and I'm looking at this plan,
Yeah, because on the bottom unit, I could take the building and the carport and switch the positions.
yep,
And
100%. You've covered park it.
Plan.
Yep, it's already built in. Makes sense.
First floor would be a basement.
That's cool.
It also would eliminate hardscape.
Mhm.
Use your services.
Make their units more valuable.
And they'd have to be 120% area median income
Maybe,
or less. yeah.
maybe a percentage
So
of
they'd
them.
be income restricted and.
My bet is they'd fall in that line anyway, here.
And I
Oh,
don't know
yeah.
that you would get a parking spot for each unit, but you actually probably could. Because each unit is
Hey,
Go right ahead.
I was going to say, so on the landscaping plan, you're proposing some additional trees along the eastern edge? Is that correct?
Yeah,
I'm just recalling when we had the public hearing last time, there was some concerns about screening from the neighboring development. Do those trees carry up the eastern edge of the thing, or are they just where I'm seeing the circles on here, kind of towards the southern boundary?
areas where there isn't an existing depth of the 12 feet of vegetation, you'll add it.
Right.
So a lot of the areas, it already exists.
Okay,
And now that there's sunlight hitting the trees that are remaining, because there was actually about a 10 or 15 foot gap of trees left there.
Okay.
Those should bush in, and then we'll just add trees where we can, probably spruce and pine.
okay. So it's along the southern boundary, and then,
Mostly they were concerned about the eastern boundary. And
Okay.
then where not required by the ordinance to plant a whole lot of trees, because I think you're only required to have 25%. But most of the area C is going to be planted. You know, like most of the disturbed slopes.
Right, okay.
So the proposed condition would be basically that entire eastern side, wherever that buffer doesn't currently exist, it would be,
That's in your proposal, your proposal, okay.
Right.
I didn't quite get where things were. Okay, no, that makes sense.
But where the existing condos are, most of that vegetation was left, right? Is what you're trying to say is it would meet most of it, or?
I would say it comes to a point where it's just barely the minimum.
Okay.
So
You wouldn't need to plant there.
we're going to be probably planting trees in the middle of trees. Because the trees that are there, they have there's no limbs.
Right.
It was a solid, thick, and it choked everything out.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll probably end up with shorter trees that we plant, and then there's existing taller trees.
Okay.
That will fill in each other.
Okay.
And these will be for rent, right?
These will be for rent. We haven't gone through any proposals or plans condo-wise.
Okay.
Which is a totally different procedure to condo-wise property versus to build it as a rental. And I believe the owner has other apartments in the area that he's done this with. Constructed and rented it out.
Got it. Any other questions for the applicant?
Just, Claire has a few other things she's just recommending, the idea of a lockable gate, front dumpster since it's close
Is
to
that
the...
just lockable on the gate of the dumpster enclosure, not the road?
right, it would just be a four-sided dumpster enclosure.
Yes, yeah. So does the front gate have to match the material of the other three sides? Okay.
What about, did you guys, I don't know if this was addressed, where, under 827B, where building entrances are oriented away from the east property line. However, recommend greater setback from east property line if possible due to less intensive development to the east.
Yeah, and the original proposal was closer to that eastern property line
And now it's
than,
not?
than where we're at right now. They've moved it.
I know that was a concern of neighbors
Yeah,
and their
it was
privacy.
a recommendation, it wasn't part of the ordinance, I believe the ordinance.
Right, yeah, I am aware of that.
So, obviously, we split it a little bit, but prefer to keep it, not lose one unit, because the last unit is 20 feet wide, and it's actually used for storage lockers. Usually applicants, they get like 500 square feet or something to store stuff inside. So if we had to, if it was a requirement, we would cut that off. But we prefer not to.
Right.
Have a better product.
But I'm hearing you say you did adjust it a little bit.
Slight adjustment. We couldn't do too much.
Okay.
We could have designed smaller buildings most likely, but this is what the owner is proposing, and it's consistent with the ordinance, we believe.
Specifically, what is the distance now? Because I can't read this.
I believe it's 12 feet.
And was it 10 before?
It was 10 or 8.
Okay.
Yeah, the requirement's 8, which is
Okay.
just
And Claire has mentioned
so narrow.
Yes, it is.
So close.
the landscape requirements should match up with the building setbacks.
Right.
Because that's a contradiction, so she's going to put stuff into the ordinance in the future, so if you want a 25-foot landscape buffer, you need a 25-foot building setback.
Right.
Where that doesn't work.
Shocking.
So you're planting on the roof, and that still defeats.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I gotcha.
How big are each one of these units, by the way?
They're roughly 1,000 square feet.
For one bedrooms or two bedrooms?
I think they're mostly two-bedroom, correct, two-bedroom, two-bath.
Gotcha.
So they're like probably 23 by 43s.
It's a decent size.
So they're not tiny, they're not huge, but
Hmm?
it's a fairly simple concept, you know, 2-story on a slab. There's still a lot that goes into these things, so.
Kind of looks like the ones that were built across the street from Costco to the south
Brookside?
Brookside?
from afar. This is, I'm looking at the elevations. Similar construction, if you can paint that picture.
I think they're a 3-story.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so too.
They're gonna look probably pretty tall out there, but they are somewhat cut in, but the property's very good. It's hard to tell what's going on.
Yeah, I don't mean to give you a hard time about the parking, but when I think about that setback too, you could also build in storage space down below.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not the developer.
Well, this is the plan that the developer wants to utilize at this point today. And we believe it meets the ordinance. We'd like to get the site restored this year as best we can. We got to install enough gravel to get up there and do our concrete work. And I would imagine it would only take the excavator a week or so to finish the grading, to get the sand grade roughly where it needs to be to start the restoring phase. There's not much topsoil out there, so we'll probably be trucking in topsoil. We got issues.
Gotcha.
So I know it's not required, but I'm just going to say it. There is a bazillion storage units all over Traverse City, and they're going up 90 miles an hour. So
There's a need.
I just don't see why losing those would be such a big deal to the value of these two. I mean, people are going to rent them with or without a storage unit. It's just my opinion, but I'm just saying, I just, if I was the neighboring property, I probably would not be happy with even 12 feet. And I'm not, I know it's not, I know it meets the ordinance, but, anyway, I said my piece.
So there were some additional recommendations regarding landscaping under 2293B, recommending adding landscaping surrounding parking area and buildings. Is
Yeah.
that something that can be done? Just because it's so densely wooded up there, trying to keep with the
Yeah,
aesthetic?
and there were some revisions made to the site plan to address that, but Claire made it a point that areas that aren't going to be planted, that are going to be grass, have to be irrigated. So we had to clarify that we're going to irrigate those areas.
Okay.
And we do, like I said, the sloped areas that we're not going to mow
Mm-hmm.
are going to be essentially all planted trees.
Okay.
And we're not mowing it.
Uh-huh.
It's going to be woody forest.
Okay. I was just going to ask Claire, and that, you think that meets?
Yeah, it definitely meets our ordinance, you know.
But did you, I mean, it sounds like you wanted maybe potentially a little bit more, and just knowing
Yeah,
the Holiday Hills
yeah,
area and how densely
yeah.
wooded it is.
We unfortunately, this is a use by right, so we can't require anything beyond, yeah, and, you know, many ordinances, you know, would require specific planting, you know, details along the, you know, for landscaping, for aesthetics, those types of things, you know, parking lot islands, all those types of landscaping, so we will have that, but this, you know, this meets our ordinance, so, but, yeah, good question, because it was called out.
So this landscaping plan doesn't include the trees on the hillside, and it doesn't include many trees in the, I can't find it right now, but on that south side where Jesse is saying that that is what the developer is intending. Can't we put that in our approval because they are
Offering?
offering?
We did want to add a bunch of stuff that's not required as part of the plan. You know, the prints definitely meet the ordinance of 25% of planted woody properties. So we may do that, but we plan on doing it, we just didn't want to, you know, make put that into the plan exactly how you're saying, so it would be something that we scrutinize. But, I mean, I don't, Stan, you plan on planting the trees on that north slope, correct? Yeah. So, at least we agree that we're going to plant the north slope, straight north of the Cotterville side. As far as the southern end of the property, we planted on, there is some trees there currently. There's a lot of small trees that should grow up, but we do plan on planting some around the country. The rest of the property, it does show plantings along Maplewood. And then the area between the buildings.
I see 4 trees planted.
Okay. I believe it's 1 every 30 feet or so.
It's greater than 30 feet. It's at least 40, but I don't have a scale and I can barely read this, so.
If there's a concern, Claire, I'll be happy to clarify that planting is adequate.
Yeah, the percent, we have, our ordinance requirements are, we have percentages, and so it does meet the percentages, and we've got some requirement for the median between the roadway and the road right-of-way and the parking area, which has been added to the plan set.
Down at the south side, though, it just says proposed tree planting. So those aren't guaranteed that those are going to go in, right?
Those would go in on a proposed landscape plan.
It will, okay.
Yep.
And like I said, there is a lot of trees that now are getting sunlight on the property, like along, underneath those
Cleaned up.
guardrails.
Yep.
That they were getting choked out before all their neighbors got cut down.
Oh, it's already on here, the landscaping plan on the, oh, but that's just the west and south at 30 feet. It doesn't talk about that north slope.
Yeah. So we weren't required to replant that, so we didn't include it, but the owner is going to do that. And going back to requirements that the township has for approvals, I don't believe when you approve something, you actually record this approval at the courthouse, correct, on a project like this?
No.
You have terms of approval. If an applicant 10 years from now is grossly out of line with their approval, the attorney for the township can simply issue a red tag. This happens with interconnectivity and these other projects that I get involved with. And can force the applicant, you can put a red tag on their property so they can no longer get clear title. That forces them to get it compliant with issues like interconnectivity, or if an applicant did not build the parking spots he's supposed to. What other mechanisms in the township? I've experienced in other townships. People said, no, you can't do that. That's why. You can require the applicant to connect, and they can form neighboring development, but they must sign a connection agreement, or they'll be sued and can be liable for extensive damages. So that's going to be part of this project.
It's okay, it's good food for thought.
As far as townships authority to bring people into compliance with contracts, they essentially are signing by agreeing to the terms of these land use permits.
Any other questions about this project?
Are there any pedestrian crossings proposed?
There's a lot of foot traffic along the edge of Maplewood.
I'm talking about in the development itself.
Currently, no. And, it's a small area, not a lot of traffic, so when they walk out, there's going to be 2 entrances, and then they have a short walk to their vehicles.
No, I was just talking within in the development south, I work on a stub road like this, and I'll tell you what, those people going to the dentist are flying, so,
Yes, I think it's 13 or 14 units or something. I mean, there's not going to be a ton of traffic with that many. People living there.
Yeah, to me, if I'm a little kid visiting my neighbors and the one to the north or the south, I'd probably just go down the driveway. It appears to not be very far at all anyway.
And again, we're trying not to add too much stuff that we don't believe is absolutely necessary to try to make things work. To find an apartment that's somewhat new for less than $2,000 a month is basically impossible. So to try to build something brand new for about $1,500 a month is getting very challenging. Professional services.
So when I'm looking at the recommendations for the approval of this, they're underneath the other possible conditions. There's the lockable gate, and you said that that was acceptable. There's the internal pedestrian connections, and I don't know that we necessarily need that here within this development unless anyone disagrees. No?
No.
And then there's no landscaping detail provided on the north hillside. And so,
So if you make a condition, we do fine with that to make sure that north side is also planted to wood.
our native grasses, okay.
Because it's not really mowable or
Right.
maintainable.
Yeah, it's too.
It should just be.
Okay.
If there's no other questions, I entertain a motion for this one.
I'll make a motion to approve SPR 6-23, subject to the conditions from staff 1, 2, 3, and 4, as well as adding the lockable gate and doing some tree planting on the north side. Is that?
I'll support.
Okay. So we've got a motion by Stevens, seconded by Rhonda for approval of SPR 6-23 with the existing findings of facts, the conditions 1 through 4, as well as the 2 additional ones, including landscape plan and the lock structure on the enclosed dumpster area. Any discussion on the motion? Yes,
Claire?
Mindy?
is the bond good enough still?
The bond?
The $20,000?
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for walking us through that. Okay, last for new business is a public hearing, but it's under site plan review 8-23 Cherry Tree Inn. And Claire, I'll kick it over to you for introduction.
Okay. So this is another one where we don't have any earth movement, change to the building footprint. The applicant is, and you'll see in kind of the history, the staff report that I wrote, that Cherry Tree Inn has been in front of the Planning Commission several times over the past several years. There was a PUD that was approved that was never built out. Most recently, they were in front of the Planning Commission for the new outdoor pool that was installed. Right now, they're looking to eliminate an existing 6-bed employee housing component within the Cherry Tree Inn and convert that to 3 rental units. So they're looking to have a total of 79 rental units. They have 79 parking spaces. They also have shuttle service for employees. They've got a 5-year lease agreement per our new ordinance amendment for parking with a nearby hotel for their employees. I did confirm with Metro Fire, there were some concerns just about emergency access and circulation. So I did confirm with Metro Fire that no review is necessary based on, their existing parking configuration, which they're not proposing any changes to. So at this time, I'd recommend approval based on our ordinance. Would recommend approval to include allowance for those 3 additional units, as well as allowance for the indoor pool to be open to members of the public during the non-peak time. So I know we've got the applicants are here as well.
Wonderful. Good evening.
Good evening. Jay Zelenak, I'm counsel for the applicant, and I will be brief. I know lawyers often say that, but truly, we're getting later. I think that the detailed report from Ms. Carter takes you through the criteria. This isn't a major change. There's no real earth movement or change to the footprint, so we would ask that the commission respectfully consider and grant the application, both to make the change to the 3 rooms instead of 6, and also to allow in non-peak season, non-guests at the hotel to make use of the pool. So,
Got it.
thank you very much.
One quick question for you, unless anybody else has any questions of the applicant, before we go live with the public. The only question I have is, and those rental units themselves, will those be available, are they going to operate as a standard hotel, like room, it'll go into the pool of rooms itself, basically, because they were for employee housing, or are they going to operate completely separate?
Right.
Different use, different ownership, I just didn't know.
There to be hotel rooms.
Okay.
And I can ask the manager if that becomes a critical point, but I think they're hotel rooms like the others, and so the guests would use.
Different experience, basically, right?
Yeah. Different than the hotel.
Yeah.
employees.
Sure.
Yeah. But in terms of the, hotel employees need parking and all the other things, so.
Yep.
Not a big change, I guess we can.
Got it. Thank you.
Real quick, sir.
I'm sorry.
Okay, looking at your parking agreement, that's with the Hotel Indigo?
Yes.
So there are, 10 slots or 10 positions there? And this will now be running on a 5-year basis? Does it
Yes.
still have the same provisions for cancellation? When, well, it used to be month to month.
That it's a 5-year,
Yeah, is it
Term,
month to
yeah.
month within a 5-year agreement, or is it a 5-year?
fixed term.
It's a fixed term of 5 years?
Yep.
Okay, for those 10 spots?
Right.
Which can move around, by the way.
Yep.
Right. Now, but the, and these for the employees?
I think that they could be used for employees or anyone who might need them, to be accessed by shuttle. But predominantly the employees.
Okay, and there'll be a shuttle provided between the,
Yes.
between the properties?
Shuttle or autumn transport.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious, thanks.
Yep. Anything else say?
So we've got 79 rooms, we got 79 parking spots, and we have a shuttle.
With 10 additional spots.
So there's not enough parking spaces for every guest to have one parking space on the site with the shuttle being there.
Right, on site, there is a reliance for the off-site parking. If you're talking about absolutely filled to capacity, the off-site accessible parking, it really exceeds it because it gets you to 89.
When we were going through this with, our question for you, Claire, I think we were going through this with,
Alexandria?
yeah, one of them. Wasn't there some study that he was saying that very rarely, or maybe it was the one down that hasn't been built yet. I don't know. Anyway, wasn't there a study that said that very rarely do you ever have 100% parking spaces to 100% room capacity?
This is per 5 rooms, is kind of the
I don't
market-driven
know
rate.
if that holds water or weight, or, I don't know. I'm just,
My concern is the Cherry Tree Inn is a little bit different than a hotel.
yeah.
And you can see that by John Pack's email, is it basically saying the same thing, is that there is a parking problem at the Cherry Tree Inn, is how I read this in very quick summary. And then adding those 3 additional and taking away, the workers' space that isn't being used and hasn't been used in years, according to this memo, that there is going to be a parking problem. And I know we just passed the parking, and my concern is that, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's more people flying in and using Ubers and other modes of transportation and aren't needing the parking spaces, but I come to that intersection a lot, and it's full a lot. So I'm just concerned that we're just one too short, one space too short. You have to come to the lectern.
Sorry, my name's Ben. I'm the GM for Cherry Tree Inn Suites. I've been there for about 5 months now. And when I got there in April, I entered into a verbal agreement with Charity, who owns the garden spa across the road, and she lets us use her lot as overflow parking, and she has a ton of spaces. So that's how we've kind of been able to mitigate the whole season. So we haven't had any issues at all for the entirety of when I've been there. So as long as we continue to keep a good relationship with her, which I plan to do because we offer a spa package, so that's how we send our guests over to her property and vice versa, then I think we should be okay. But, yeah.
I tend to lean on the parking thing with the folks that are operating it and just say, peace be with you. We've had our conversations with allowing it. I don't want to open up that can of worms again. We just got
So I
through
guess
it.
the question is,
Oh, I feel about parking.
well, I guess the question is, do we need to require them to have the extra 10 spots at the Hotel Indigo? Because that was if we're going to allow them not to be, why are we going to make them have the Hotel Indigo?
We're not making that as part of this.
Well, so the flexibility that we approved in our ordinance was allowing off-site parking. Previously, it was very strict, like it had to be 300 feet away. We built in some flexibility to, it needed to be accessible by, shuttle, beta service, some way to have an off-site and allow some kind of case-by-case basis to make a determination. So in this instance, they've got the shuttle service and they've got the off-site parking accommodation.
I'm curious, you mentioned Shirley, was that?
Her name's Charity.
Who?
Charity?
She's the owner of the garden spa,
The what?
The
of
gardens.
the garden spa that's right across the street.
It's recently opened.
Right, so my question would be, would there not be a requirement to have some agreement in writing similar to the thing that you have with Indigo?
I think the Indigo meets
I was going to say, yeah.
the requirement. This is just additional.
Yeah.
And closer and more favorable.
And even if it went
However-
away, he still meets the requirement with the additional, so I think that's just a handshake agreement they have that,
It's not going to be necessary. It's a nice to have, sure.
yeah.
I'm just asking. I mean, it just seems that we are coming down about having a written agreement with the Indigo and changing the requirements from what it was month to month, very flexible, to a 5-year agreement. And then we're talking about the extra parking, and yet it's a handshake and, that, which is closer, obviously. And why would there not be some requirement to have something a little more substantial?
Because then it would
They
exceed
don't
the
need to.
requirement.
So one thing that I'll just mention from kind of my observation, staff, we receive a tremendous number of complaints throughout the township, and I have, we do not receive parking complaints in my time with the township for the past 4 years. So we're not receiving complaints of overflow, of, unsafe conditions, of lack of parking. That's not a complaint that we receive, so.
I will say, though,
And just in my experience, so I can't speak for the history of the township, and the last 4 years, we did not receive those.
I will say, though, that I've watched people try to get to the other side of the road from the cherry tree, and there's a very marked crosswalk, and they're all trying to go on the other side and playing Frogger. So,
You're talking about pedestrians?
uh-huh.
Okay.
So,
Something needs.
That's a 31 issue.
Some
And that's,
calming-
that is absolutely
That's
something that
for the
needs
whole
to be
next mile.
addressed. Yeah.
well, but I'm just recommending that you remind your clientele that there is a crosswalk on the one side, there isn't one on the other, so take the 100 feet and get to the crosswalk.
Only because you're the pro in the room on the usage, I'm just thinking of this as, you're converting these as to why you're doing it, and it's, I assume, because they're probably gonna be a little bigger space, is that accurate?
Correct,
So it'd be more of a family coming in, everybody can have a little bit more space to spread out, have an atmosphere. Got it.
Is it fair to ask where the employees are gonna be housed now, or with housing being such an issue?
That's
It
another
hasn't
topic.
been used.
Oh, they haven't been
Most
used.
time.
Right.
Oh, okay.
That's great. That's another topic for conversation. It'll probably be a capital expenditure in the next few months. TPG wants to buy an actual house to hold J1s and H2Bs, and then use our shuttle to take them from property, Cherry Tree Indigo. It's a lot of money, but if they want to do that, then that's fine.
Do you think they'd be an investor in an overall larger project? We should talk more later. I'm not kidding. But
There was one here that,
I know. We need to align forces, right? I mean, it makes sense.
You know, employee housing?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, seriously,
Issue everywhere.
if you had a buyer that was looking for housing and we could design something that might fit a little better into a deal, just making connections. But, yeah. Any other questions for the applicant? I'm going to hold a public hearing first, before we take too much more, because we haven't done that, and there is some public here that may want to speak. So thank you for that. We may have some comments for you. So at 8:13, we're going to open the public hearing, and now anybody else?
I'm just new, so I came to.
You have to come to the mic.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's all right.
We're televised, so you have to come to the mic so they can hear you.
I'm just new. I inherited my mom and dad's condo, so I just kind of wanted to learn more about the township,
Gotcha.
even though my parents have owned the condo for like 30 years. So that's why I'm here.
Gotcha,
Who are
well,
you?
welcome.
And your address?
Oh, boy. Julie Marcy, I'm a neighbor to him, and yes, the people do cut across all over that area, and don't use the crosswalk except for me, because I'm my mother's daughter. So, and that is a concern we're already having with the Alexandria opening, the new hotel opening, and people were like, oh, they could put a pedestrian bridge, and I'm like, you people have no idea how much those cost. It's never gonna happen. But we know we have one down by the state park, so that's why they thought maybe you'd put one in there, but, and he's right, she's right, they do not use the crosswalk that often.
They go to the
Parents-
other side.
My parents have been there, on that ever since it was built. There's always terrible accidents there. We've talked about hopefully getting the speeding reduced or putting in another light, but it is a bad area for crossing, and a lot of people, even with little kids, don't use it. And people are just lazy. Even downtown today in Traverse City, instead of going to the crosswalk, people were cutting right in the middle of the road. That's just how people are, unfortunately. And That's how our accidents are happening, so.
Just to let you know, the township is undertaking a visioning process for US 31, discussing just those issues, so if you want to attend, they're posted on our website.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. And a lot of us will be interested in it. So I live downstate. I was here buying furniture, so. Thank you.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, and we will close the public hearing at 8:15 and bring it back to the planning commission. Any other questions or motions that need to be put on the table?
Make a motion to approve site plan review 8-23, subject to recommendations 1 through 3 in Claire's staff memo.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Carl, seconded by Stephen. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Good luck with your new project, and thanks for being here.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, that was our last piece of new business. Back to public comment round 2. What, second last chance?
Or what am I supposed to?
No, I'm just kidding. You don't have to. You don't have to. Just soften up.
I'm thinking about the US 31 chicken into that, that's good.
Yeah. And just FYI, on that topic of the corridor, I was just in a conversation, maybe this will come up later, but we were just in a conversation with the city of Wyoming. Okay, so think of 28th Street, okay? Chaos.
Yeah.
Chaos. Feels familiar, right? In terms of like, and people are taking their lives into their hands, getting back and forth across that nightmare.
Even in a car.
Even in a car. It's ruthless. So the city of Wyoming had been doing a bunch of like, what do we want to be when we grow up visioning in that specific corridor because it's so violent. And they tried to create basically they're trying to create a new just kind of hub, call it a downtown, call it a whatever, hub of focus. And as a piece of that, they did a ton of infrastructure, visioning, programming, how would it flow, how would it work. I don't know if it would fit anywhere in this area, but they just received I don't even want to say the number, but an appropriation from the state for the improvements of that entire corridor. They'll be burying power lines, adding streetscaping, adding sidewalks, and adding a pedestrian bridge that will go elevated on each side as both kind of a visual to slow the heck down, but also as a way to give people a thoroughfare. It's gonna also include like lighting for different times of the year and ADA accessibility and a new like kind of focal point for events to take place for their community, which right now is unobtainium.
Is that a state appropriation or federal?
State. Yep. So when we start thinking outside the box, like know that these things can happen. I was shocked and awed at the design and the plan. And I applaud them for fighting diligently to make it happen, because it is happening. And they are designing a whole new kind of concept around that feature, which is really cool from a private standpoint to try and facilitate more investment in that spot, and it's happening. So pretty cool, but I just want to throw that out there as like lessons learned that I've just seen recently, because it's so like what we have going on here. And I mean, I don't have the answer in front of me, but there's other people that are out there being creative with stuff like that, so.
Did they indicate how long this would take?
How long, what would take, the implementation?
Their project to the implementation.
They're looking to start burial of the power lines like next spring, and then the actual construction of the crosswalk would be over like, I think I want to say it was like an 18-month period, because it's huge. It's monstrous. It's like $6 million
Wow.
for just the
That's cool,
crossing.
though.
but it's sweet.
Yeah, I lived down there for 10 years.
And think of the power lines that are up and down that
And
corridor,
how many
like,
times that they've been hit.
right, right. And think of the increment that we've missed over the course of the last even 2 years. We would have paid for all of it already. Tax increment financing.
Well, I will give just one quick update. We're issuing an RFP for the visioning effort tomorrow. So we've got it all drafted, it's ready to go out. So that will be, we've got about $100,000 that we'll be putting towards hiring a consulting firm to help us with exactly what Dan described. So, yeah, we will be looking for, we're looking to convene a stakeholder group, and we'll be seeking some involvement from the Planning Commission, so.
Cool. Anything else to throw out there for the good of the order? If not, upcoming meeting dates are as follows. And we don't forget the special meeting, Tuesday, September 19th, our second hitter in the month. And Paul's exciting zoning ordinance subcommittee meeting
Oh, yeah, I mean.
And Carl.
following, nice, on the 20th. And I have to go to a township board meeting
On the 11th.
on the 11th, which I think I have, but I'm going to double check. And with that, we're adjourned at 8:21.
So I'll just mention, the zoning ordinance subcommittee has probably about 3 more work sessions, and after that, we're going to have a full draft for planning commission review. And so most likely, we're going to have 3 work sessions with planning commission. So we're going to take this full draft zoning ordinance, split it into 3 chunks. So those will be special meetings, likely similar to this Tuesday, September 19th. It'll be the 3rd Tuesday. We'll do that throughout the late fall into the winter, and then looking at scheduling the public hearing for the full zoning ordinance in early spring
Oh, good.
for adoption.
All good.
I have great confidence.
So it's happening. It's taken a long time, but
I got a witness.
Random, I should probably throw this one out there. I know that we talked about, we were adjourned. Yeah, oh yeah, we're way.